A fuel choice that even rivals can agree on? Now that's worth the hype. Cheaper, cleaner, and homegrown. Pump it up with unleaded 88.
If you grill it, he will come.
Hey.
Is this heaven?
Nope. It's Fareway.
Chris Hassel, Andrew Downs. It's time for Instant Iowa. Immediate analysis and reaction presented by Fareway Meat Grocery. From the Channel Seed Studios, this is Iowa Everywhere.
And we are jumping on early at the 2-minute timeout ahead of Iowa putting the finishing touches on what ends up being a blowout victory over Northwestern. It's Instant Iowa presented by Fareway from the Channel Seed Studios. I'm Chris Hassel with Andrew Downs and AD. The biggest story of the game, obviously, is Brennan Sullivan coming in, replacing Cade McNamara after a pick six, and Iowa running away with it. Now, the bigger story moving forward is going to be, one, is Cade hurt? Because they took away his helmet, and they're basically telling the BTN crew that he was doubtful to return. Not sure what that injury is yet. Is Brennan Sullivan okay after seemingly hurting his hand late in the third quarter? And three, what's Kirk Ferentz going to say about this quarterback situation moving forward? But the bottom line is, the move needed to be made. It was, and Brennan Sullivan was who we thought he was, which is a better option at quarterback than Cade McNamara.
Not a great quarterback, not a world-beating quarterback, but a better guy, certainly in Tim Lester's scheme than Cade McNamara, and kind of has that swagger, right? There was some talk, I know, coming into this game where maybe you don't want to play him against his old team and the emotions of all of that, but the kind of guy you want at quarterback will feed off those emotions, right? And that'll kind of put a little more fire under him, and it felt like that happened today. Yeah, man, we have a new quarterback, and that's awesome. I didn't expect it. I wish it wouldn't have taken as long as it did. You're going to play what if on this season forever, probably. I wish it wouldn't have taken as long in this game as it did. I wish it didn't take an awful interception that was negated by a roughing the passer call, and then a pick six, which wasn't a much better interception, but certainly not the terrible throw we saw early on. Again, before we get too far, it's a win, baby.
There you
In heaven
go.
there is no beer. We got a Gable from Single Speed.
Okay.
Pour a little out for Cade McNamara's Iowa career. It was fun while it lasted, man. I'm sorry it didn't go better. I'm glad you got a paycheck. But this is going to be fun because we're not going to be able to watch Kirk Ferentz live. And so our commenters, I'm guessing some of them will kind of see, or we'll see it on Twitter, and we'll be able to react immediately. You don't expect Kirk Ferentz to say, hey, Cade McNamara is not our starting quarterback anymore, even though that's what we all want him to say. He's going to be diplomatic about it.
Well,
It'll
now
be
I think he has
interesting
an
to see.
out, too, and he's going to
With
be
the
able to
injury,
reference Cade's, whatever the injury might be.
I'm going to guess
and
they said
Sullivan's
it was on
injury.
that. I'm going to guess that the McNamara injury was on that roughing the passer, right?
But if it was, why keep him out there?
That's a really good question.
To throw a pick six in the red zone.
There was no, I mean, I guess if he got hurt, but he didn't, it's not like he was like, there was nothing to indicate that he got hurt on that pick six. And so when they didn't have the helmet, I did wonder, is this just Kirk playing games? Is this just them? Hey, now we have that reason other than Cade played horribly.
How about the Big Ten Network crew, though? They were like, no, now hang on. Now wait a second. No, this was going to happen all along. This had
Insane.
nothing to do with Cade McNamara's play. This was the plan all along. They were
Right.
off the mark on a lot of things in this game.
I
do
heard Todd
not
Blackledge
believe
last week have no idea what was going on.
Right.
So you're not learning much from this Iowa coaching staff when you're covering these games, apparently.
I don't believe that Brennan Sullivan would have been in that early, one, had McNamara not thrown that pick six, and two, he had 3 straight 3-and-outs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so glad that they stuck with him, because after each one of those possessions, I was saying to myself, God, he hasn't had a real fair shake yet.
Right.
Don't take him out and then say, see, he's not any better. This is what we see in practice.
Yep.
And then boom, 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 4 straight touchdown drives. And he was a part of it. Like, he wasn't throwing 30-yard bombs for the score, but his legs opened things up. That opened up the running game for Johnson. And you referenced it earlier. Now we're saying, and we knew we would, it's kind of a double-edged sword. We want you to bench Cade, and then we're going to bitch about why you didn't do it earlier.
Yeah.
Got a text from my dad late in this game who claimed he had checked out on the season, much like I did. And he said, see, if we would have had Brendan Sullivan, they'd be in the top 15 right now if they're only lost to Ohio State. And I said, Dad, if Sullivan plays in that Ohio State game, we're unbeaten. We're perfect. We're in the top 5. I don't believe that for a second, but that's
right.
The second guessing that goes on. But at least the decision was made today.
It was overdue, but it actually happened. And like you said, we saw a difference in this team. We saw a difference in this offense. He certainly ran the offense better. He didn't have, I'm guessing, I haven't looked at the stats, but he didn't have the longest throw of the day. That was Cade McNamara to Seth Anderson on that first drive. And when that happened, it was like, okay, here we go. But then Cade just devolved from there. And you're exactly right. And then when Iowa got into the red zone or into the to-go situation, you didn't see Sullivan. And we had talked about that last week. Like, oh my God, what if they pull snaps away from this guy rather than give him more? And so it really, like, I'm not going to lie, man, in that first quarter, and really even probably those first couple of series with Sullivan, it was like as bad as I felt as a Hawkeye fan since maybe the Hawk Slayer Bowl at the end of the 2014 season, right? Like, I mean, it really was starting to be hard to see light at the end of the tunnel and any reason to kind of continue down this path. Brendan Sullivan didn't save the season or the program today, but he made me feel a hell of a lot better about some of those things. And then the way he played that great lead block when he kind of dumped the ball off and then sped down the field. That was fantastic. That's the guy you want leading your team. That's what we thought we had in Cade McNamara, right? A guy with some swagger, willing to go out there and kind of prove things with his play. And so it was good to see that from Brendan Sullivan. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. This is a bad Northwestern team. Yeah. We'll find out a lot about this team next week when Wisconsin comes to town. But it feels a heck of a lot better right now than it did about an hour or two and a half hours ago.
And the game has gone final. Iowa wins it 40-14. They scored 37 straight points after Sullivan was inserted into the game for Cade McNamara. Sullivan 9 of 14, 79 yards, but on the ground, 8 carries, 41 yards, and that's when Caleb Johnson started to explode. Yes. He had 4 rushing yards into the final couple drives of the first half. He had 7 carries, 4 yards, and then broke through. He finishes with 14 carries, 109 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Do want to thank one of our sponsors here on Instant Iowa, and it is Freedom. Freedom Tire. Do.
Feels like I'm in church on a Sunday morning.
I got a DM from Quentin Crowner, who heads the team over there at Freedom Tire. And he said, we just had somebody come in for a tire repair. It couldn't be repaired. Had to purchase 2 new tires. They said the whole reason they came in was Iowa everywhere. And thanked us for what we do. Freedom Tire winding down Shocktober, where you buy 2 struts, get 2 shocks for free. You can find them in Altoona, in Des Moines, West Des Moines, and in Urbandale. And look, you Cyclone fans up there in Ames, you can find one too. They are right there in your city. Purchase a set of 4 Goodyear tires right now. Get an in-store instant rebate of $100. Plus, get up to $225 additional dollars in mail-in rebates. FreedomTire.com.
And that kind of stuff helps us out so much here in Iowa. Everywhere we're a local company with a lot of local sponsors, and so and it's new media for a lot of people, right? The digital space and podcasting and live streaming. So anytime we can get our audience to go into these places and actually say, hey, the reason I'm here is because I heard it on Iowa Everywhere. I heard it on Instant Iowa. I heard it on Two Guys or Murph and Andy. That helps us out a ton.
Comment from Marty who says, well, I'll be damned. The fans and local media right again
Who the
about
hell
changing
knew?
quarterbacks.
Who knew? The backup quarterback might be better.
Look, we were probably wrong about Padilla, but at least Padilla had more mobility than Spencer Petras did. But more often than not, when fans are clamoring for somebody else, and it goes all the way back to Brad Banks over McCann, Stanzi over Christensen, Beathard over Rudock, more often than not, we end up being right. There were actually some people, Williams is one of them, Chris Williams, my co-host on Two Guys.
Yeah.
He thought that Kirk Ferentz was refusing to make this change because he was worried about being wrong again and the fans being right. I don't buy that for a second.
I don't either.
I just think he's just so damn stubborn.
Yeah.
That he refuses to make the change until it has to be done. And I really do not believe, AD, that unless he throws that pick six, Sullivan's really getting a real shot in this game.
No, because the defense wasn't giving up any points to this team. This was a bad offense that Northwestern rolled out there. The poetic justice of Iowa moving to a backup quarterback who would have been Northwestern's backup quarterback to end up blowing them out in this game is interesting. But Iowa was going to win this game even with Cade McNamara at quarterback more likely than not.
Probably, yeah.
Because that Northwestern team was so bad. I mean, they scored 14 points on a pick six and a punt return, and the punt return was so late you kind of throw that out. And so, no, you're exactly right. Even that terrible interception, which was so much like the interception last week in the fourth quarter against Michigan State, where the throw was not close. I mean, 10, 15, 20 yards short. I have this quick video.
Oh my
First of all,
God.
the laces. My God.
Laces again.
Grab the fucking laces, man.
And
Jesus.
it was no laces on the pick six either.
Yeah, absolutely. And that throw, as soon as he let go of it, that's his worst throw as a Hawkeye,
Yeah.
and that's saying something.
That, I think, will go down as his defining play,
I
even
think
though
so.
it got wiped out by the controversial roughing the quarterback
Yeah, I didn't
penalty.
think that was roughing the. I get that, the drive, but it was not late at all, and it felt like that guy really couldn't avoid that. If I was a Hawkeye fan, or if I was a Northwestern fan, I'd have been pissed that got called. I'll put it that way.
Man, what a game, though, for Brendan Sullivan, and to do it against his former team. I'm just going to go ahead and launch into it right now. My hoodoo doer of the game is Brendan Sullivan. And this is a guy who was with this team as recently as 5-6 months ago.
Yeah.
And you could tell how much this thing meant to him. I mean, he had an extra gear. He always brings the energy, but he had that extra gear. And the toss where he outruns everybody and he's trying to throw blocks out front, and then he's talking trash, getting into the face of his former teammates. I was texting with a former Hawkeye great during the game who was at the game and played on that great Brad Banks team. And he said, Iowa needs a quarterback with attitude that's mobile. And that's exactly what Brendan Sullivan is. And I thought this was really important to get him in there for work like this, not just for this game, this season. Got to see if he's the guy next year, if he's good enough to be the guy next year. Because if he's not, then you're going to have to go into the portal and get somebody else.
Yeah.
So I think he showed today he has the ability to be good enough, unpredictable enough, mobile enough to make things really hard on the opposing defense when you have an offensive line and a running back playing the way they were.
That's the biggest thing, right? When you have to account for both of those guys, it opens things up so much for Caleb Johnson that the offensive line is good enough to open up holes in that scenario. And we just saw him keep plays alive that Cade and several former Hawkeye quarterbacks wouldn't have been able to keep alive. He was awesome today. It was a lot of fun to see. I'll go into my hoodoo doer of the game here, Hassel.
We had to fight over this one.
We
because,
did.
There was one
This is the obvious one.
performance that stood out above all others, and it happened before the game.
It did. So Keith Murphy sent and posted this video, but the video credit goes to Sweet Diva because Murph wouldn't get his phone close to a porta potty, and for good reason, because some guy dropped his phone into the toilet of a porta potty while tailgating outside Kinnick Stadium today. While he's trying to get somebody to fish it out for him, offering, I don't know what it started with, ended up $250.
Yeah, so the guy says, oh my God, my phone is in the shit down there in the porta potty.
Yes.
I can't do it. There's no way I'm going to do this. But look,
I can't just
if
leave my phone there.
If somebody is willing to do it, I will pay you. Name a price.
So a college kid.
Yeah. And we
like-
don't have any names here. I think Keith wanted to keep the names out of it.
Yeah,
maybe.
protect the innocent, right? A college kid's like, I'll do it for $250. By the way, that kid's gonna have like the greatest night of his life because he just made $250 taking it out to the bars. He doesn't care. He's gonna
his
blow
new
that
nickname
money
is
like
Shit
that.
Hand
Well,
for the
but
rest
it's
of his
not
life.
because he's a genius. Anyway, let's check out the video here.
Oh, nah, Gage.
Oh, his name's Gage? Okay, now we know his name.
He was good. Two thumbs, got a phone.
Gage went in there and got it, but smart kid.
Yeah.
He made sure he had this huge garbage bag around his hand and his arm.
And he took his shirt off so that he didn't get any shit on his shirt. Like, this kid, all he had to do was reach in and with a garbage bag and grab this guy's phone. And you're not going to use that phone. What do you just take the $250 and go buy a new phone?
I think he might use that phone.
Would you use that phone?
It would need to
You wouldn't
be,
put that phone back in your pocket.
It would need to be an extreme sterilization.
You would light
process.
that phone on fire. I know you.
I don't know what I would do. I really don't. I would need to first off strip away the case, throw that away.
Yeah.
And then the phone would need to be dipped in some kind of concoction that would kill anything around it. I love my phone so much, and I'm attached to it so much, and the last thing I would want to do is wait to use my phone. I mean, I've got everything on there. I might use it. One of the craziest things, AD, though, about this was while the guy who dropped it in there was trying to find somebody to get it,
Yeah.
people were still going in and out of that porta potty, pissing and shitting on that thing.
Can you imagine? The guy's like, hey, if you have to go number 2, please don't go in this one because my phone is in there. Can you imagine going in there and just pissing on somebody's phone?
No.
That's hilarious. Yeah, our buddy John Miller says, Chris, you won't even use your phone now knowing that some phone in the universe has been inside a porta potty shitter.
Drew says that on that post-game interview with BTN, Ferentz just gave Brennan Sullivan credit, gave more credit to the defense with the Higgins pick and the special teams with the Weegan return. I think what we're going to hear in the post-game press conference is we're going to look at the tape. Mm-hmm. We are going to see how the guys are health-wise this week, and we'll continue to evaluate their play in practice. Just to put a bow,
we're happy with the way that Brendan played, stuff like that, right? Like
I bet he'll also say, there were some things he could have done better.
But and then it'll also be like we knew this is what we
knew what we had in him.
Yeah,
I told you we were confident.
We knew
in both
if
of
he
these
got
guys.
a chance, he would take it.
The great thing also about that video, and you pointed it out in our group chat, AD, is like what that kid did, Gage, I guess his kid is, to get that phone. That's something that you could post on Hoodoo. Hey,
yes,
I have a cell phone that just fell into a porta-john. Can someone come fish it out for me? You could post that on Hoodoo, and you might get somebody to do it. Hoodoo, for a limited time right now, and it's really limited because this thing runs out on Halloween, take 50% off your first job. Hoodoo has its own app. Download the Hoodoo app or visit heyhoodoo.com for anything. Fishing phones out of toilets, home projects.
As long as it's legal.
Photography. Yeah, if it's legal, Hoodoo has your back. Hoodoo, the easiest way to get shit done. Hawkeyes get it done today with another 40-point performance at home. That is, I believe, 3 40-point home games for Iowa this season. Did they not start off with one?
They did. And then the Washington game.
A 40-14 win over Northwestern. I threaded the needle, AD. I threaded the needle here. I had a late inkling that Iowa was going to run away with this game, even though I think I picked in the Randy Peterson column that this was going to be a 13-point game or so. I had Iowa minus 14.5 and Northwestern scoring more than 10.5 points.
Wow.
And I threaded that needle
you did.
to perfection. I'm feeling real good
got
about
lucky
myself.
with that final punt return for Northwestern.
Woo. I know. I thought that was over with.
Because that offense was not scoring today. And shout out to this defense.
Yeah.
They played amazing. You had the safety, obviously, which was big and a big point in the game. You needed them to have that kind of a play. But the interceptions and just really gave Northwestern nothing. I mean, at no point did it feel like they really even threatened to
I was
score.
worried on the opening drive.
Yeah.
And then they totally shut them down.
Some of those missed tackles on the opening drive just gave you some PTSD from last week and everything you saw. And you're like, man, they didn't clean this up at all. But ultimately they did. And you see that a lot with Phil Parker. The first drive often looks a little iffy on the defense. And more often than not, historically, they've been able to clamp it down and do well.
So this defense clearly took last week personal, that embarrassing performance against Michigan. They went 10 straight drives in this game after that opening drive, 10 straight drives without allowing Northwestern to even reach their own 45-yard line.
Jeez.
10 straight. It included a couple of turnovers and a safety and 4 or 5 3-and-outs. I just so impressive. We're going to be talking all throughout the week about the quarterback play.
Yeah.
And obviously, Johnson has another 100-yard game and 3 touchdowns. But it was the defense and the special teams getting back to basics and, throw out that last punt return.
Right.
I don't know how many reserves were in there for that. It was 40-7 at the time with a few minutes left. But I thought it was a vintage performance because you get the safety, you get the punt return, TD. All 4 Reese Dakin punts in that second quarter were downed inside the 6-yard line. The defense doesn't allow a point in this game. The only points come off a punt return and a pick 6. And Northwestern, obviously, those 10 straight possessions where they don't even reach midfield. I was very pleased with this bounce back by Iowa. Look, the huge goals are out the window, but I think we feel better than we thought we would have because Iowa got back to their identity on defense and special teams, and it certainly appears as though Brennan Sullivan is going to be the guy, as long as he's healthy, moving forward.
And, you mentioned it with Reese Dakin and what he did in that second quarter, especially punting into that north end zone. I mean, that the punting is winning has kind of become a joke and a cliche, but like the reality of it is when you can pin a team back, especially on that side of Kinnick Stadium, where that north end zone is just towering and the noise is deafening and these quarterbacks get rattled, all of a sudden the defense doesn't give. I mean, you go 3-and-out from the 6 in that end zone, you really are in trouble. And the field flipping that Reese Dakin was able to do. And then obviously Caden Weechin. We've been talking, you and I, everybody all season. It just has felt like for a long time he's been on the verge of breaking one. And that one that he broke, I mean, 10 or 15 yards in, you were like, oh, this is it. And he still had to break a tackle or two, and he got real close to stepping out of bounds there. But it was awesome to see Caden Weechin kind of come through.
It was only a matter of time for him.
It really was. And I saw Cooper DeJean on Twitter, post something. He's like, oh, just the start for number 21. And stuff like that is so cool to see. And I was really happy for him. And, yeah, a really good special teams game. And that was one of my kind of, stealing the thing from you, got in the habit of writing down some things I wanted to see. I wanted to see a big play on special teams. And honestly, through the first half, it was, hey, 4 punts inside the 10. That probably cumulatively counts for that. Cumulatively.
Those punts really did turn the game, though.
They absolutely did. But then obviously the Weechin thing, I wanted a defensive score today because I thought turnovers would be available. And the safety, hey, that counts. And then I wanted McNamara to complete a pass beyond 20 yards, and he did that in the first drive. Great catch by Seth Anderson, who laid out to get that. And then lastly, just get the win, and Iowa got that in a blowout fashion. So, again, as tough as things looked in the first quarter, you again leave a game like this, as you said, the third 40-point game of the season. You feel pretty good about things. And I think through now 7 games, you can say that Tim Lester's offense is certainly working, right? It's a lot better than what we've seen. It's a lot better than what we ever saw under Brian Ferentz. And it really feels like, okay, if you give this guy a couple of years and he can recruit into this system and kind of make this happen, you feel pretty good about that hire, which I know a lot of people questioned when it was made in January or February or whenever they ultimately pulled the trigger.
It's certainly ahead of schedule for me. I mean, the numbers that this offense has been putting up are not numbers that I thought that they would be able to reach, and they've done it for the most part with a bad quarterback in Cade McNamara, and that's obviously the story of this game. Cade McNamara replaced by Brendan Sullivan early on after he throws a pick 6.
It happened. I really didn't think it was going to happen.
I didn't either.
I've been laughing at people who thought it was going to happen.
But I thought it needed to have something like that had to happen. And
you're right.
You're Kirk Ferentz, and you've always preached ball security more than anything else for a quarterback. And you're in the red zone, and you throw a pick 6. That throw, and coming on the heels of the duck that he just threw up there when he got bailed out by the roughing the passer penalty. But look, again, as of right now, full transparency, we are doing this show before Kirk Ferentz goes to the podium, before we know the severity of the injury to McNamara, the potential hand injury to Sullivan. So let's just guess, AD, who starts at quarterback next week?
It's Brendan Sullivan or we fucking riot, man. Like, I get that Kirk Ferentz is stubborn.
What if Sullivan's throwing hand is like dangling?
Then let him
What
run
if it's
the ball.
really hurt? Run the ball?
Marco Linus, how good is he? We can't see Cade McNamara back under center. It just can't happen. They tried, and hats off to them for going into the transfer portal, getting the NIL money it took, and making it happen. He's done as a Hawkeye. Because now, especially with the loss last week, taking everything legitimately off the table moving forward. Kirk Ferentz has never been a coach that'll play for next season, right?
Yeah.
He's playing for the guys, and that's how it should be. That's one of the things you love about him. That's why these players love him. They need to focus on this season for guys like Jay Higgins, right? Who came back and have a senior season, and they're not here next year. They don't. And so they need to do that as a program, as coaches. That's understandable. Us as fans, we can move on mentally to next season, and it's important that Brendan Sullivan get these next 4 games, as a Hawkeye starting quarterback, so that we know what we have in him moving forward. Do you need to go into the transfer portal? What's this going to look like next year? And there's no way it's Cade McNamara. There's no way. If it's not Brendan Sullivan, it's only because he's injured. I don't think we saw anything to really say that his hand was
he stayed in the game. He's
exactly.
Still, even
he threw
after,
a couple of passes.
Yeah, even after the injury where he was kind of signaling, my hand's banged up a little bit, my throwing hand, he did throw a couple of passes. Now, the game was totally out of reach. They didn't need to be throwing it at all. So I agree, unless there's some kind of, broken bone or something to that effect, it absolutely has to be Brendan Sullivan. And I don't know how the team wouldn't be completely rallying behind him, AD. I mean, you saw the reaction.
Yeah, exactly.
The sideline when he scored a touchdown. And Cade was one of the first guys, give him credit, up there.
Absolutely.
Patting him on the helmet. But, all this stuff, Kirk Ferentz saying that Cade's a captain. And Cade can stay a captain. That's fine.
Yeah, for
Whatever.
sure. Yes.
But don't
Seems
put
like
him
a
out
good
there
guy. Yep.
unless he has to go out for injury reasons. That's the only reason we should be seeing Cade McNamara again.
And even then, like if Brendan Sullivan is hurt, I want to see Marco Linus. The Cade McNamara era at Iowa is over. It just is. And
well, we ended it last week. That was the first thing we said on Instant Iowa last week. The Cade McNamara era is over. He has no chance to make this a success.
Nope.
History is written. That's it.
And you're right. Plays like that first quarter interception, which was called back, are going to be his legacy at Iowa, unfortunately.
Yeah. Look.
God, I was in the stands the first game last season and the first drive, and he threw a touchdown, and it was like, oh my God.
So much hope.
We got him. He's everything.
And there was more hope again this season after he stayed healthy in the offseason. It looked like he was much healthier than he was going into last season, and they put up 40 in game 1. He comes out, looks great quarter 1 against Iowa State, and then
I do fear, man,
apart.
and we're seeing a lot in the comments right now of how much money it costs to get Cade here and how that's all down the drain.
You're not getting that money back.
And you're not getting that money back, and between that and the Caden Proctor debacle, like it worries me how tentative Iowa fans are, and reasonably so, understandably so, how tentative they are to invest in NIL when it just doesn't seem to be paying off in any way for the Hawkeyes. And that worries me moving forward, because in this world, you're going to have people investing in that, unfortunately. And we've once bitten, twice shy, right? And we've been at least twice bitten now. Like the two biggest transfer portal NIL guys we could possibly get. One never played a snap as a Hawkeye, and one played a bunch of terrible snaps as a Hawkeye.
That's going to be a really tough battle for Brad Heinrichs and the Swarm, but not a battle that we have to worry about right now. They at least went out and they got a competent Big Ten backup quarterback in Brendan Sullivan.
Yes.
And he's got a year left, and he certainly looked good today.
If I was not active in the transfer portal, Brendan Sullivan's not on this team.
Yeah.
4 years ago, if you had told me Iowa was picking up quarterbacks after spring football and giving them opportunities to play that fall, I would have laughed in your face.
And there's no way that they're putting Marco Linus in that game. They're not creating a package around the goal line for Marco Linus, even though he's a great runner. I don't think Kirk Ferentz would let Tim Lester do that. I think the fact that Brendan Sullivan has Big Ten playing experience gave him a little bit of an edge there, and allowed him to, we're over halfway through the season, but finally make that change.
It's going to be one of those what-if seasons now, especially if they look good. Let's say they do somehow find a way to win out, right, and beat some of these teams. I'm not confident about this Wisconsin game.
This Wisconsin game will be fun. I would love to see Wisconsin tonight, and a lot of you, I understand, are listening to this on Sunday and already know the outcome of that game. But I would love to see Wisconsin beat Penn State and come in there as a ranked team and have it really feel like, those old rivalry games in the Big Ten West, and try to ruin Wisconsin, the good thing Wisconsin has going, because they've won 3 straight. They are feeling really good about themselves.
They feel like they've found their kind of they're kind of clicking with that new scheme.
They are. They're finally putting up points with that air raid, and the defense is playing Wisconsin defense again. Instant Iowa brought to you by the Full Court Press family of restaurants and bars. AD, what's your favorite?
Of all of them?
Yeah, because there's a dozen or so?
I mean, my favorite for what, right? Like, my favorite for beer is El Bait Shop.
Beer,
my favorite
draft beer.
My favorite for like a lunch is
cocktails,
is the tap room.
Pizza.
My favorite, right, exactly. Yeah, pizza, fongs. I could eat that all day. They have a little bit of everything.
Have you ever tried that?
The Red Monk.
Have you ever tried that Ken's Not So Secret Speakeasy?
I have. That place is really cool.
I would love to try that.
Under the tap room.
Yeah.
Yeah. They have good whiskey.
But they make a mean old fashioned down there.
And that's exactly what I was about to say. They know what they're doing, right? Like, you go to some bars, you don't know what to expect when you order a drink like that. You're going to get a good old fashioned at Ken's Not So Secret Speakeasy.
Wrapping up the month of October with Oktoberfest. Of course, Hessen House is a fantastic place for all kinds of German beer selections. 50 German beers on tap, 100 more in bottles. Our thanks to the Full Court Press family of restaurants and bars. Nobody does it better in the city of Des Moines. AD, the Hawkeyes bounce back. 40-14 over Northwestern. Brendan Sullivan replaces Cade McNamara and ignites the Iowa offense at one point. At one point in this game, Iowa scored 5 touchdowns in 15 minutes and 12 seconds of game time, spanning the end of the second quarter through almost the end of the third quarter. 4 of them were offensive touchdowns. One of them, of course, the Weegan punt return for a touchdown, but 35 points in basically a quarter.
Yeah. It's incredible. I mean, it was fun to watch. Again, it feels like Sullivan fits Tim Lester's system better.
Perfectly.
Certainly opens things up for Caleb Johnson, who had another huge game. This season, honestly, now needs to be about getting Caleb Johnson his numbers and getting Brendan Sullivan ready for next season.
Johnson, some of those runs he had were just artistic. I mean, a work of art. Mark Freund has a video of, I believe it was the first touchdown run that Johnson had, where he breaks free into the secondary and then kind of spins off some guy that was coming in to try to spear him, and then just stiff arms the fuck out of some Northwestern guy. I mean, right in his face, blocked him off on the goal line as he romped into the end zone for the touchdown. He is starting to give me some Sean Green vibes. They had a throwback video of Green. You know, Green was bouncing off guys and running through tackles and stiff arms and spins. And man, Johnson is just so lethal when he gets into that open field.
Here's the play you were talking about.
Oh, this is the Mark Freund video? Yeah. Spin, stiff arm. Get out of here, son.
3 touchdowns, 15 on the year now for Caleb Johnson. And he's going to have opportunities in these games.
I think Sean Green had 20, and that was the record for a season.
Yeah, exactly.
From what I saw,
and especially in the second half of these games where I was kind of worn down the other team. If you have to focus on Brendan Sullivan running the ball a little bit, it's just going to open things up for him. And then you got to get Brendan Sullivan ready for next season and give people a reason to stay engaged and stay excited. I've been on like the pro Kirk Ferentz bandwagon for so long, and it felt again in like after the first quarter of today's game, it really was like, my God, what am I even doing anymore? Like, why am I watching this? Why do I care?
It was no fun for a while.
It really wasn't, and so we'll see how it goes moving forward. It feels a hell of a lot better than I thought it would at 3:15 this afternoon.
I don't know that it could have really gone any better for an Iowa fan today. You got to see Brendan Sullivan finally come in, and you got to see him do what we thought he could do. You saw 3 Johnson touchdown runs. You saw a long 80-plus yard Weegan punt return. You saw a safety. You were in the north end zone.
Defense pitched a shutout.
Yeah, you had that 4 straight times inside the 6-yard line where you were going crazy. I love the story from the Big Ten Network sideline reporter that was talking about Northwestern preparing for the game by practicing indoors and turning the speakers up so loud that they broke.
Yeah, they blew the fucking speakers. And it probably still wasn't loud enough, man. That north end zone was crazy.
If I'm Iowa, I'm cutting that quote off and I'm putting it in the media guide for next year when using quotes about how tough it is to come into Kinnick Stadium. And this was a game where I thought it would be an apathetic atmosphere.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it might have been had they stuck with Cade McNamara.
And it sounded like there were a lot of boos, and again, understandably so.
Oh yeah.
The biggest cheer in the first half was Caitlin Clark and the Iowa women's basketball team being honored. How cool was that, though, that they were there? Lisa Bluter was there. Megan Gustafson was there. It's basketball season, right? The Hawkeye men had an exhibition game last night, but it was good to, because I was like, man, ready to fully check out. What are we even going to do on this show, moving forward? If I would even squeaks out a win today,
right?
You start looking ahead and you're like, man, they're going to get smoked by a couple of these teams.
Man, Nebraska looks pretty good today, too.
Absolutely.
Almost beat Ohio State.
And it's almost worse that they didn't beat Ohio State, because now they're still looking for like that thing. And, come Black Friday, you're not ruining any sort of season for Iowa if you go and beat them at home on Black Friday, but you can kind of make a statement if you're Matt Rule in Nebraska now. So yeah, it's you feel better about this team moving forward. It's going to be really interesting. Now people are saying 7:00 for Kirk's post-game presser. So people will be watching that, I'm sure. But
the hell's taking him so long? Is he having like a champagne shower in there?
They're trying to figure out what's wrong with Cade McNamara and whether or not he can play in 7 days.
They're trying to get their story straight on what the injuries are.
Don't expect any declarative statement.
No.
Don't expect, hey, we found our quarterback. Brendan Sullivan's our guy. We're moving ahead. Hell yeah. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen on Tuesday when they meet with the media. It's going to be subdued. He loves Cade McNamara. He's not going to throw him under the bus in any way, shape, or form.
Nor should he, but no, I mean, you can still say Sullivan is our guy without throwing Cade under the bus.
It would be nice if tonight Kirk Ferentz said, we look like a much better team with Brendan Sullivan at quarterback, and that's how we're moving forward.
All right, we're going to move forward, AD, and put the bow on another Hawkeye win on Instant Iowa, back above 500 in Big Ten play, and setting up for a really fun game next weekend against Wisconsin.
We got hate week this week, baby. Fuck Wisconsin. I hate those bastards.
You hate them more than anybody.
We got to beat them.
Like, you hate Wisconsin like my dad hates Iowa State.
Exactly, yes.
But we don't know.
That is how I relate it to people, because I don't hate Iowa State like that. Because I didn't grow up in an Iowa, like my parents aren't from Iowa, so I didn't grow up with that. So that's how I explain it. It's I hate Wisconsin the way you hate Iowa State.
At this point on Saturday, we don't know what time next week's game is going to be. It could be anywhere from noon Eastern to 3:30 Eastern to 7:30 Eastern. But
it should be. I don't think it will be. But
I think that it's going to be the NBC night game.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
There are only two options for NBC, and I think the other one involved Illinois. So, Illinois just got their ass kicked today at Oregon. If Wisconsin wins tonight against Penn State, it is 100% going to be on NBC next week. Selfishly, I'm hoping that it's not. But
yeah,
give us more early games. Hawkeyes win it 40-14. Thanks, AD. Thanks to all of our great listeners, Iowa and Iowa State fans. We know the Cyclones like to listen.
Yeah, buddy.
Even though today it wasn't as fun for them. Instant Iowa presented by Fareway Meat and Grocery from the Channel Seed Studios as the Hawkeyes beat Northwestern 40-14 in the Brendan Sullivan takeover game.